I think I got up at somewhere between 6 and 7:30 in the morning. Either way, I had my African politics class at 9:30 in the morning, although, as usual, there was a period where I thought it was at 9 in the morning, but then I suddenly remembered it starts at 9:30 in the morning. Significantly before 9 in the morning. We talked about different factors that help to explain why industrialization has stalled in Africa. In particular, I think some of the things discussed included things like environmental concerns, the fact that most African countries were at some point colonized, and the typical policy of colonies under the system of mercantilism was to not allow colonies to develop manufacturing, because the plan was that the raw materials needed to produce manufactured goods would be grown in the colonies. The raw materials would be sent to the mother countries. The mother countries would produce the manufactured goods, and then the manufactured goods would be sold to other countries. And money would be earned by the mother countries. And this is what I have so far of my answers to the comprehension questions, which is a rather difficult process at times because it requires that I answer them entirely in Spanish, which means a rather painstaking process of flipping between word reference for a word when I need to find the Spanish word for what I'm trying to convey, in the Spanish dictionary whenever I need to conjugate a verb in Spanish into the tense I mean to use. I've moved into the fairies chapter, though I don't know if I'm officially in the fairies chapter until I complete this research upgrade, the first of the fairies chapter. I got 200 diamonds from the chest I opened for this chapter, which required, if I recall, that I have 130 completed provinces. Last I checked, I have 149 completed provinces. Excuse me. I've been working all day on my sale cultural Uno assignment for my Spanish class. Although more of that time has been spent on the comprehension questions than on the actual essay itself. I'm working on it in Grammarly, and I find it relatively easy to work on the essay. It's at 193 words, which is about halfway. To the 400-word minimum. I should hopefully be able to do what I need to do in time for this assignment. This is pretty much the only studying I did for the short quiz we had in our visual art experience class, because Trump Loy is relatively hard to spell. It's not terribly complex, but it takes a bit of studying to learn how to properly spell. And that's what I did by repeatedly covering up the term so I could spell it on my own. That was my first attempt. Then probably this, then probably this, then probably this, and then probably this, I would imagine. And it did end up being an easy quiz. Just 5 short answer questions. I do mean short answers that only needed to be 2 to 3 sentences long, or the equivalent of a short paragraph. I believe I did minimal work on the 99th Dan Hamming today, due to all the work I've done on the Instead of Cultural Uno assignment, for which I watched, and I'm still watching, the documentary When Two Worlds Collide on Canopy. I found it quite fascinating. My thoughts are that it shows it does a good job at showing both the Peruvian governments and the indigenous people of Peru's perspectives on the clash between developing the economy and protecting the environment. Obviously, it's important to side with the indigenous people and protect the environment. That doesn't mean being against economic development, because economic development has led to improvements in the standards of living, but environmental harms will easily reverse any improvements in the standards of living further economic development could do, and then some. There can still be economic development, but it has to be after considering the needs of the environment. The documentary, at one point early on, I'd say within the first half hour or so, they show the indigenous people of Peru having become ill due to drinking water that was contaminated by foreign companies. Although in the essay itself, I believe I just said companies extracting natural resources from the jungle. For our Spanish class, we did some exercises regarding the determining when to use the subjunctive mood or the indicative mood. When to use either mood is obvious, to me at least. You use the indicative mood when you're certain of something, and you use the subjunctive when you're either not certain of something or you're certain that it's not there. Though obviously in reality it's a bit more nuanced. And you have to take into consideration the entire sentence. Which I have tried to do in the past. I have 2 city expansions in order to try to ultimately complete these side quests. This one I'll probably be able to complete as soon as I get that scouting cost decrease, the research upgrade I'm currently working on. This one, however, is significantly more complex. Basically, it requires upgrading this steel manufactory. So that's something that's not easy to do because it has such a space requirement that I probably have to use a city expansion in order to fit it. And plus it requires a significant amount of population. An amount that cannot be easily gained. I don't think you can even gain enough from the cultural building of the Wayfarer's Tavern. Actually, it seems like you can, but... And I imagine that one quest at some point will require me to, but it's not entirely easy to get necessary population. I mean the necessary space. In our art class after the quiz, technically there was the evaluation, the self-evaluation, of which I worked diligently on. I thought that I was almost finished with it. And then it was revealed to me by, I think, my professor, that there were questions on the back. Which actually made me literally go, oh no. And then it was time for the evaluations, I mean the critique. The process of which was explained to us. You know, even though, to prevent it from being entirely subjective, you have to create some criteria to be agreed on as a group. It was told to us that to be a professional artist, you have to have a thick skin in order to take constructive criticism and rejection by jurors, which is what you're called when you critique art, essentially in order to decide which art pieces you think are the strongest for the art show. And often you'll see art shows under a theme, such as abstract paintings, pottery, and in our case, Troglodyte ceramic shoes. Though that one could be overly specific, I think. I'm working on doing my usual thing of having 2 energy drinks, but not getting 2 energy drinks today. I didn't get any at lunch because I didn't have this bag that I typically use to carry what I get from Harrison Dining Hall in. I didn't think to bring it with me. and I've had a relatively busy day. Pretty busy, I would say. I think one of the very first things I did today was eat that last slice of leftover pizza from the Rooster, along with a thing of Swiss rolls and my first energy drink of the day, because I didn't want to be hungry for my Spanish class. That first energy drink is part of the reason why I turned my camera off at some points during today's African politics class. Everyone else had their cameras turned off, and I felt that it would be distracting if I record myself drinking an energy drink in class. So of course, I made sure to turn the camera back on at other points. At the end of class, I also asked about the email I sent regarding the week 1 assignment. And apparently, the professor didn't get it, even though I remember sending it. So, I'm going to, I guess, send it again tomorrow, because this Enseo Cultural Uno assignment comes first. Even before the very minor Spanish assignments that I'm behind on. And these are the wax beans. During the art critiques, after which I worked until roughly some minutes after the end of class at 3:15 p.m., me exiting at roughly 3:23 p.m. on that self-evaluation. Though I did get a bit confused on the questions that were on the back. The first one on the back seemed to ask roughly the same thing as the two bottom questions regarding which areas were weak and which were strong in terms of craftsmanship. The answer I ultimately came up with, I was concerned was contradictory, but La Professora told me it was fine. I said that the detail work for my ceramic shoe was my success, and that I was weak in adding depth to that same detail work on my ceramic shoe. And then I said that if I could go back in time, I would carve my detail work more in some parts of it. And though I initially accidentally wrote curve, which was not what I meant, and I had to ask the professor about that. Or law professor, because my professor for my art class is female. For our group of 3 with 4 people for the critique, I picked shoe 1 over shoe 3, which was my shoe, because shoe 1 seemed to have more craftsmanship due to the laces and the intentional tiny holes to try and add detail. Plus, it had a good bottom. Although the other critique group picked my shoe. But then when it came to the sort of championship ring where my shoe was pitted against shoe 2 and the other group of 4, because shoe 2 in our group had relatively little detail and a detailless bottom, pretty much. There were 2 shoes on the other shoe group that had bottoms that were where I could actually clearly see that clay had been added because the bottoms weren't smoothed out. They were not smoothed. But ultimately, shoe 2 from the other group, shoe group, was pretty much the overwhelming winner over my shoe. Still, though, it was quite an enjoyable process. It was a fun and new experience for me. And this is to get an idea of the exercises we did. This whole part, everything, is the exercises we did today for our in-person Spanish class. I actually, for that page 489 exercise, I mostly copied down the answers when they were given because I technically didn't answer a single one of the questions before it was time to check the answers because I got confused regarding what I was supposed to do for that exercise. Though I did the exercise before that just fine, it's just that in the original textbook it said I must not have paid much attention to the model, which is supposed to show you how you're supposed to do it, so I ended up kind of creating sentences based off of what was given in numbered bullet points, what was meant to follow the Kanoski's again K part. And I just made a question and a response to it, with the question not having that initial Kanoskare again K part. And then I made the response based off of that. And then when I was corrected of that mistake by the La Professora, I got kind of confused again, because somehow my initial question after that wasn't using the subjunctive after that. But ultimately, in the end, I think I was able to ultimately come close to doing the right thing for the first question and response. It seemed like such a big exercise, and it seemed like it would take so much time. At the time, I think when we began the exercise, it was roughly 11:50, and class ends at 12:15 p.m., so it didn't seem to have much time. I initially thought that we just had to do responses, and for the first 4, they'd be affirmative, and for the last 4, 5 to 8, they'd be negative responses. And so caused quite a bit of confusion. And I tried my best on the second exercise we did today. The first exercise seemed incredibly easy to me, though of course that made sense. It was the first exercise of the day.